Hi, this is Aryeh, and I have a very special announcement. There is now a way for you to contribute directly to the production and ongoing existence of this podcast, Culturally Determined, and that is by subscribing to my Substack newsletter. You can sign up for the newsletter at aryehcw.substack.com. That is aryehcw.substack.com, and a link will be in the show notes. For only $5 a month, subscribers will receive a weekly roundup of links to interesting stories and essays that I've selected, and also an exclusive photo of my very cute cat, Eddie. If you choose not to subscribe to my Substack, I will be very disappointed in you, but your life will not otherwise change, as this podcast will continue to be free. My conversation with Robert Wright is coming up next. Thanks for listening and enjoy the episode. Hi, welcome to Culturally Determined. I'm your host, Aryeh Cohen-Wade, and my guest today is Robert Wright. Bob, could you please introduce yourself?
Yes, I am Robert Wright. I most recently have written a book called The God Test, Artificial Intelligence and Our Coming Cosmic Reckoning. I've written other books, NonZero, The Moral Animal, The Evolution of God, Why Buddhism is True, and Three Scientists and Their Gods. I put out the NonZero Newsletter, the NonZero Podcast, and the NonZero Podcast is actually descended from Bloggingheads TV, ultimately, with which I think you have more than passing familiarity, unless I'm mistaken, unless I'm getting you mixed up with somebody else.
No, that's all correct. Yeah, so you are my former boss at Bloggingheads TV, which we did an episode about 6 or 7 months ago about Bloggingheads on its 20th anniversary of its launch. People can go back and listen to that if they want to hear more about that. But we're going to be focusing on your new book, The God Test, today. So thanks for coming back on the show. And
Thanks for having me.
well, let's start off with, so this book is about AI, and while I was reading it, I sort of thought that this book is sort of like the Avengers movie of the Robert Wright oeuvre. Like all of your books I think are mentioned in this book, and it's like a lot of the concerns that have animated your career as a writer and as a public intellectual are all sort of combining and coming together in this book. So for people who've been reading you and following you for a long time, this is a very interesting book to read. And when I first heard you were writing a book about AI, I was kind of surprised. But once I read it, it all made sense why this is something you're interested and concerned about, and that just a lot of your longstanding concerns about the evolution of humanity, cognitive empathy, foreign policy, the mind-body problem, consciousness, just religion, a lot of it has all combined in this like somewhat surprising way around AI. So I encourage people to check out the book. A link will be in the show notes. The God Test, it has an impressive title. But one of the things I wanted to start off with was the question of why, you're writing about something that is changing, the facts on the ground are changing rapidly, and there's been stuff even just in the past 2 weeks that seem to ratify some of the things you're writing about, like with this possible like jailbreaking and hacking of autonomous AI models or something like that. And writing a book and the publishing process is long and can take a long time. And I think standard, it's like 9 months to a year when a finished manuscript is put into when the book is published. So why did you want to write a book, and were you worried about being overtaken by events or what?
Yeah, first of all, I vigorously contest the claim that my book mentions all my past books. I don't think I go quite that far in my self-reference, but I mean, unless you count the page up front that says also by Robert Wright, and I didn't even write that part. But
you mentioned Three Scientists and Their Gods,
true,
which is your first book.
NonZero.
Yeah, NonZero's in there.
Why Buddhism is True. I don't think I mentioned the evolution of God. I doubt I mentioned the moral animal.
Oh, I think moral. I'm surprised. I think moral animal might be in there. Okay, maybe not mentioned directly, but ideas about both biological evolution and cultural evolution.
Yeah, no, it's a logical.
Are deeply in there.
Yeah, it's a logical extension of my other stuff for sure. Most directly, maybe my book NonZero, since that, and it's 25 years old or so, and that was about the direction of technological evolution, and also to some extent of the biological evolution that gave rise to technological evolution. There's a number of ways in which this kind of makes sense in the context of that. But as for the question about, writing about a moving target, it's funny. As I was writing this, people would say, must be hard to write about something that's changing so fast. I didn't think that was really the biggest problem because I felt pretty confident that I was, you might say, directionally correct, except in a different sense than the sense in which that term is used, I mean, directionally correct in the sense of emphasizing certain lines of the trajectory of AI advance, like clearly more and more autonomy, for example. And, the market wants that, and that implies a number of things and certain kinds of risks and so on. I still feel good about that. I mean, so for example, the book went to bed right before the mythos thing, but I do say, one of the risks is a super hacking, thing, and that's a threat that crosses borders and so on. I mean, that was kind of foreseeable. In a way, the bigger challenge, and the one I would always focus on when people ask me this, is anticipating how much my audience is going to know, because I did anticipate the subject, growing in prominence, as it has, quite considerably, it seems to me. It's hard to say because when you're writing about any subject, you're kind of immersed in it. And like, you've got, in this case, your like Twitter list of people who are also obsessed with this. So it's easy to overestimate the extent to which awareness is growing, the extent to which the sense of, the acceleration of the technology is widely shared outside of the AI community and so on. But it is very clear to me that the thing I was most worried about, which was the moving target of how much people know, is a problem. So, I mean, even just things like, even terms like doomer or the famous, paperclip thought experiment.
Mm-hmm.
A lot more people have heard, I think, about the paperclip thought experiment than had heard about it a year ago. That's not a big problem for me. I just spend a few paragraphs explaining it in what I hope is an entertaining fashion. But in answer to your question, I feel basically in terms of the developments in AI since the book was, put to bed. And by the way, I don't understand why books have to be put to bed as long in advance of the actual pub date as they apparently do, but leave that aside. the I feel more or less vindicated by the direction of things. And the thing that's, well, both most gratifying and in a way unsettling, if you worry that the arguments you're making will be overtaken, a big part of the argument is we will be in serious trouble if we do not address the AI revolution as a cohesive global community. It's an inherently international challenge. You cannot secure national security, for example, through national policy alone. There are all kinds of reasons it's going to take international coordination. And the discussion of that really is, growing. I mean, I think the argument I make would still strike a lot of people as naively idealistic or something, because I'm really talking about nothing short of getting past this war among nations thing if we're going to really address this technology with the care that it deserves. But look, just in the last 2 weeks, there's been this, as we record this, there's been this Pacing the Frontier letter which got sign-on from the chief scientists at all the big AI companies and over 1,000 people in the business and at least one big AI CEO. And it called on the government to at least support the development of the policy and technical tools that would be required for an international effort. That's the key word to me, is international in the letter. To, they said, pace the development of automated AI or something or other. But the key thing is all these people are saying, look, things are moving pretty fast. We may need to slow it down a little, and the only way to do that is internationally for reasons we can get into if you want. But I say that in the book. And, there have been other, Trump himself, no big fan of international governance, God knows, has initiated a formal dialogue with China about AI safety. That happened at the last Beijing summit. I think we'll see some follow-up when he goes back to China, which I think is in September. But so, in certain respects, it's heartening. It's heartening how far the conversation has moved. It's a little unsettling that what's moved it is a growing sense of rapid and possibly reckless advance, right? It's like the escape of this rogue OpenAI agent from its sandbox and its penetration of the Hugging Face infrastructure played a role. So did the unveiling of this super hacking mythos thing. So it is kind of unsettling developments that have pushed the conversation in the direction I want it pushed in. But that's better than having the unsettling developments without the conversation moving.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, why don't we talk about your argument in the book, which is you're trying to convince the reader that the AI revolution is a monumental step in the history of the world, beyond even the history of humanity, and that something is happening that is like monumental, an inflection point in our understanding of reality, and then we need to do certain things so that this doesn't get out of control in various ways. And you talk about the doomers slash the sci-fi doomers who postulate various ways with machines take over, or this paperclip experiment idea of just like misdirected AI running out of control and thinking it's helping us but really destroying us, or something like that. Is that an accurate summary?
Well, the paperclip thought experiment is a case of telling the AI to do something and not specifying clearly enough what it shouldn't do in pursuit of that goal. So that's why the OpenAI example is good. They said, okay, we want you to pass this test. And they thought they had it in a, quote, sandbox, so it couldn't escape. And one reason they wanted that is because it was actually a hacking test. They wanted it to figure out how to solve, how to crack this particular security gate or something. But what it did was, rather than figure it out, it just thought, thought in quotes, it thought maybe someone on the internet has the answer. So it broke out of the sandbox, which they didn't think it'd be able to do. It broke into Hugging Face, which
Hugging Face is it like a AI software database site?
Hugging Face is a clearinghouse for open source AI.
Okay.
So there's a lot. I don't know how exactly how it works, but it found the answer. So there is a lot of stuff, relevant stuff in Hugging Face about AIs, and I guess apparently about how to solve hacking problems. But apparently it got the answer and came back. So strictly speaking, it did execute its assigned mission, but they didn't really want it to cheat. But they didn't say don't cheat. They just put it in the sandbox. Mm-hmm. So that is the paperclip. The paperclip thought experiment. They say maximize the number of paper clips, and it says, well, okay, you sure? And then it, if you want to maximize the number of paper clips, it needs to turn all of the universe's resources into paper clips, including human beings. But so that is one kind of challenge. Now I forget that. So you brought that up at the tail end of a question about what more broadly. Remind me.
Yeah. Well, can you lay out the argument, the overall argument of the book?
Yeah.
For people who are deciding whether or not they want to check it out.
Yeah, you mentioned sci-fi AI doomers, like Eliezer Yudkowsky. I don't know if you remember when Eliezer Yudkowsky used to show up on Bloggingheads TV.
I do very well. Yeah, Eliezer Yudkowsky is a sort of autodidact, unusual fellow who appeared, around like 2007 or so on Bloggingheads as like a science blogger kind of guy, but has since become quite influential in the world of AI philosophizing or something. And he wrote this book called something like, "If anyone builds it, everyone dies."
Good title.
Right. That's a great title. Almost as good as the God Test. But he's very concerned with these hypothetical ideas that seem somewhat outlandish, but like ways that we could destroy ourselves unintentionally by pursuing this technology.
He focuses on, I called them sci-fi doomers as opposed to other kinds of doomers, because they're talking about the AI escaping control and ultimately taking over the planet. And in his view, not necessarily wishing us ill, but just having no particular use for us. And as he puts it, we're made of stuff it can use for other ends or something. But anyway, he thinks one way or another we'll come to regret it. That's possible. It's not my main concern, but I do go through the logic of AI escape and explain why. Although I was skeptical when I did my conversation with him on Bloggingheads between 10 and 15 years ago, I think. I have since come to believe that, although I'm not nearly as sure as he is, that the inevitable fate of humans in a world of untrammeled AI is extinction or something as bad. I do think we can't rule that out. However, I would also say there's a range of other things I worry about more. One is, just specific loss of control cases, like a rogue AI goes out and takes down all the satellite communications infrastructure or something. It doesn't take over the planet, but it's a problem. It could be launched by a bad actor. And a lot of these are now pretty well known. Bioweapon, designing a new bioweapon with an AI, and that there are existing AIs that do, if you can get around the guardrails, which apparently you often can, that make that easier. The thing I feel most certain we should worry about in the near term is just the collective impact of AI along a lot of dimensions, jobs, geopolitics, family and social life. I mean, I have heard, it's funny, I just got an email from somebody I know who actually sponsors a big math prize. And, he's somebody who has money, and the prize is for like real money. And he was reporting, about specific mathematicians who are just really despondent over this recent, a couple months ago, an AI solved some Erdos problem that blew mathematicians away. And then last week, OpenAI said, and here's another 10 problems that human beings had struggled with. And apparently they're solved. We don't know for sure. Maybe they'll find flaws in some of the proofs. But top-flight mathematicians are freaking out. And that's just a little narrow slice of kind of what you could call psychological dislocation as a result of AI. But, romance, family, just across the board, it's going to be creating new kinds of issues that, most of which we can figure out, like maybe all the people who lose jobs will find new jobs or kind of reinvent their old jobs. But that's going to be destabilizing, if it happens on a large enough scale. So And, you know, look, our own country is already in pretty bad shape, right? It's like,
Yes.
we don't need any more destabilization. We don't need any more people freaking out, running around saying things are falling apart. We need a strong leader, right? Like, especially when AI is a technology that can so empower authoritarians. So I worry, you know, there are scenarios in the book where you wind up with war between the US and China because of the destabilizing effects of an AI race. So in the near term, like next 1 to 5 years, I am most worried about what I think is inevitably going to be a lot of just destabilization that could have long-term very bad effects, possibly made worse by the fact that it will happen in a context of advanced AI, and that tool can be used by people who exploit the situation we find ourselves in.
Mm-hmm. But you also see, you are not a doomer in the sense that you think the technology should be destroyed or something, which maybe that's Yudkowsky's position. You see great promise in the technology if it is wielded properly or wisely, or through
Yeah, it can do
a
a
way
lot of good.
international cooperation.
I don't doubt that it'll help cure various diseases. It can be used right now to give better medical guidance, including initial diagnostic guidance to a lot of people in the world who just don't have access to that right now. I mean, it's better. Look, as I told you, I tested positive for COVID last night. It was useful for me last night. And
Can you talk about that? Like, did you put your symptoms into a chat GPT or something like that, or what? How did you use it?
well, yeah, I said for starters, like, you know, I felt like I just had a cold for a few days. So I was kind of surprised. I said, first of all, what are the chances that this particular test is giving me a false positive? And the answer was good. I was very, very smart. And then all the questions I would have, like I had been thinking about, I mean, you know, when am I infectious? Am I dangerous to other people? What are the chances, given that the symptoms have been mild, that blah, blah, blah will happen? I mean, the more interesting case for me was cancer. I had surgery a year and 3 months ago, 2 months ago. And that was, I mean, it was good and bad. In a way, you can learn more than is necessary or good for you. But I definitely asked a challenging question to my oncologist that I finally convinced him that he needed to consider a second path of treatment if we didn't get better results from the next week's blood test than we gotten from the first week's. And they were reluctant. And I mean, they would not have brought this up. I mean, I did serious research, and he finally kind of conceded. Yeah. He said, yeah, I think, look, we really expected the last blood test to be better. This is a test that actually, it gauges the quantity of a kind of byproduct of the cancer, of a specific kind of cancer in your blood. He said, we thought for sure with the immunotherapy, you know, it is pretty much always gone, you know, the blood level's gone down in response to immunotherapy. You are really an outlier. And we were only having that conversation because I had forced the issue. And he said, so you're right, you know, if it doesn't look better next week, maybe we should consider chemotherapy before surgery, blah, blah, blah. Now, as it happened, the next week's test was better. But I still was right that my situation was much more complicated than I had been left aware of. I don't mean like they were misleading me or anything. I mean, I think if you're a cancer doctor, you should be mindful of not needlessly causing anxiety.
Uh-huh.
But
and just so you used an AI program to ask questions, do research, like was the AI program prompting you to challenge your doctor, or how did that work?
In the age of agents, it sounds quite old-fashioned because all I was doing, that's another thing I talk about in the book, is just agents, and they've gotten much bigger. since again the book went to bed, but directionally, I mean, it's what I was talking about. The key thing is there is a paper, a research paper that was very relevant to the meaning of the results I had gotten on this blood test that I would never have uncovered through a traditional Google search. So really, it's pretty simple technology. It's a paper that it was out there, it was online. It wouldn't, given if I had spent 5 times more time researching it with old-fashioned Google technology, maybe, but I just wouldn't. I wouldn't have had it. And that was actually the key to getting him to agree, yeah, you're an outlier. He literally said, we've never seen a case like yours. That was as it happens, a needlessly scary moment, because then the immunotherapy did eventually kick in. I mean, it still had the surgery, but I didn't need to have chemo or radiation. But look, I mean, I don't know if you've used these medical things, but and you do have to be, you have to use them with care. I mean, I had a potentially dire situation involving a close relative. And I asked I have $20 a month subscriptions to 3 of them. And it's funny. This was really Claude is take her to the emergency room. Google Gemini is it's fine. And it turned out that Gemini was focusing on one of the numbers in the report I had shown them, and Claude was focusing on another, more alarming one. And what's interesting is ChatGPT said, you see these 2 numbers? They can't both be right. There's something wrong with the measurement. And by the way, related to that, so there's been human error, okay? There's just something, and it was right. And speaking of which, when I first put my MRI report into the AI before I had talked to a doctor, this is a report that pretty much showed that I did have cancer. It's yeah, this is bad news, this is bad news, this is bad news. I said, why didn't you mention this sentence? It starts with abnormalities found in. And the AI said, because I think the radiologist meant to put no at the beginning of that sentence. No abnormalities found in. And the AI was right. So, the moral of that story is just when people say, oh, my AI still hallucinates a little, or it still does this, or still that, people do all this shit. People do a really bad job of a lot of shit. So the question is, the question isn't, is AI perfect? The question is, are employers going to find it a cost-effective way to replace people? And I'm afraid, the answer in many cases is yes.
Okay. Well, there's a lot there. I know.
I'm sorry. I do have COVID, so I'm just my brain.
Yeah.
Rein me in.
That story is compelling, and it's impressive. Various parts of it are very impressive. That the machine detected human error that no human had detected, and you without the machine would not have been able to figure that out on your own. And probably Google of 10 years ago would not have been able to reveal that if you didn't have the knowledge base. So that's all impressive. I had 15 or so years ago, I had but perhaps you remember, I had a series of strange illnesses that we couldn't get to the bottom of. And I remember talking to my doctor and bringing various things up. And he said, stop consulting Dr. Google. I am the doctor. You're just I was basically making myself even more freaked out by doing my own research, more or less.
Right.
And,
was he right?
That was probably, I wonder if I had access to ChatGPT and other things 15 years ago, how it would have played out. But he was at least right in terms of my mental health, that it wasn't good for me to be going down various rabbit holes and being I think, if I stop eating onions, then that'll be the good thing. But wait, this one's over here says onions are not on the list. It's what if did I eat an onion 2 days ago? So I was just sort of spinning out in my own head, and more information was making it worse in that particular case. But I've always thought when the human doctor said stop using Dr. Google, that made an impression on me, because it was reinforcing my hypochondriac tendencies. And thankfully I've been healthy since then, so I haven't had to go back into that world.
Yeah, it's a problem. they're very mindful of this particular use of the technology, and I think they obviously work hard to get you to take necessary precautions without freaking you out. Like when I first reported the lump in my neck that did turn out to be a cancerous lymph node, it's like, you should definitely get it checked out, but often these things are nothing. But although when I showed it to my GP, I was like, it's probably nothing, right? And he's like, it's like the AI had been really erring on the side of kind of kindness. By the way, there's an interesting kind of coda to the cancer thing, which is like, okay, I get to that point, he's saying, yeah, you may need chemo before surgery even, and blah, blah, blah. But then I get the result in my portal that we had hoped for. The kind of degree of cancer manifest in the bloodstream has gone down pretty clearly in response to the immunotherapy, because it just doesn't do that spontaneously. And I thought, this feels great. And I asked the AI about it. Yeah, it's like great. But my doctor, and actually there were two doctors, there's the oncologist, there's the surgeon, and it's the surgeon I would have naturally talked to. But in any event, I wasn't going to have a conversation with him for several days. It was scheduled, a phone conversation. There was no great reason to, but I just did not feel the sense of reassuring closure, even that I would have felt if a human being had told me, after the good result, what the AI told me. And I'm curious, I always ask people, like, how much do you feel like you are talking to like an animate intelligence when you talk to AI? I mean, there's just that part of the human reassurance it couldn't give me, even though in some sense I trusted it.
Yeah. And 20 years ago, like, there weren't online portals, and you did not get an email saying your results have come in and
Right.
you can access them without your doctor talking to you about them first. And whether that has been a net plus or net minus for human health, I'm not sure.
I agree.
And like, I had one, there was something within the last couple of years where there was some test for a venereal disease that I took, and it was negative, but the way the test naturally replies is like, it says +4 or something, but it was negative. And like, as a layperson, I'm looking at that like, well, wait, there's no way I had this. Like, it can't be positive for that. And so if I didn't see, like, it wasn't generated to appear in my portal, I never would have seen that and had that, moment of like, wait, do I have X? Because previously only experts were getting the raw data or whatever and looking at it. So it's a double-edged sword. I think it's like, we have access to more information, but the interpretation and sorting of it continues to be a problem. But
it does. But the AIs, I gotta say, they're really good at it. I mean, the ones, again, I pay the $20 a month. ChatGPT, for my money, is the best on medical stuff, but they're really good. And you can ask them all these follow-up questions, and then you have the appointment with a doctor. And as a rule, I do not feel I've been misled by the AI.
So what is it? It's been interesting reading your book and thinking about this stuff. Obviously, like, we've been thinking about AI a lot for the past couple of years since ChatGPT, version 3 or whatever came out, and seemed to be doing these miraculous things. I am like not an early adopter of technology, and so most things I'm like, I'll let this play out. Like, I don't need to get involved. I don't need to try it. Like, I never downloaded TikTok, both because at first it seemed like this is just for children, and then it was like, oh, this is super addicting, and I already had an addictive relationship with the social media sites. I don't need to try another one. And then it was like, oh, this is like, seems to be bad in all sorts of other ways, but didn't fully understand. So I just like, I'm not trying new technology in general. So I've done a little bit with chatbots. I've done way less maybe than the average person. And I've also been sort of like largely skeptical of it for various reasons. I mean, one, skeptical maybe is not the right word, but just like disdainful of it, or thinking, well, this is just another thing that's making the world worse, as so many things that have been created in the past 25 years that seemed either cool or like neutral to begin with have turned out to make the world worse. And like, smartphones seem just like a cool, useful invention when they first came out, but they've had all sorts of unintended consequences that we're still figuring out. And if I could snap my fingers and undo smartphones or something, like maybe I would, like maybe the world would be a better place without them. So there's all that is making me skeptical, plus the fact that it's possibly making my professional skills useless slash any sort of like, so I previously worked as an editor at the political site The Hill, and was reading a lot of unsolicited pitches, and it just became clear that more and more people were using ChatGPT to write op-eds that they wanted published.
Is that right? Now, when was this? At what point was that clear to you?
2024, I would say.
Yeah.
And there were various tells about it. One was that we were getting more and more essays that had bolded subheadings within the essay of like a subtitle.
Right.
And that is not the style. The Hill does not use that style of bolded subheadings. I went to ChatGPT and said, write an op-ed in the style of The Hill about raising taxes, and it generated one with these bolded subheadings. And I was like, okay, well, that's a clue. And often the subheadings were very cliche, and like the final one would always be like wrapping up or a final thought. So I was getting more of these, and it's like, okay, this technology that I'm not using is like making my job harder because I'm sorting through like junk essentially. And the company had a policy about not accepting pieces written by AI, which I think they probably still do. But it was just like, oh, it's not like this is just wasting my time basically. And I've continued to sort of view it as, reading about like the sci-fi doomer ideas of, it taking over or enabling like a one world evil oppressive government or something. I've just sort of seen it, the way I've seen it play out is more like it's just making things worse and shittier, like in the general cultural environment, in a way that isn't evil, but it's just like, yeah, this is just another thing we have to deal with that kind of sucks. So how does that resonate with you at all?
No, I share a lot of that. I mean, I'm older than you, and older people especially, tend to have a kind of a conservative reaction to change. So, I'm a little skeptical of the many moments where I just think, man, I'd just rather like music be something that humans be the ones who make,
Right.
And it happens a lot. And I very much have the sense that, like a lot of people, like, look, we still haven't really figured out how to handle social media. It has had a lot of bad social and political consequences.
Yeah, for sure.
And we still don't know. And then these accelerationists are saying, look, trust us, AI is going to be great. Wait, we trusted you the last time and it didn't work out. And by the way, I do think social media blowback is one of the reasons, for some of the negative AI sentiment. And it's not unwarranted because they told us it was going to be great. It is alluring. It is helpful in many ways. There are great things about it, but the idea that it's been on balance, good for society, it seems to me that's kind of a tough case to make.
Yeah.
And so, no, I share your general reaction. I try not to let, just a generically conservative impulse dominate my reaction. I'm trying to see what good could be done by it and what bad could be done. And, what I feel most confident of is that slower is better. We got so much to figure out, and we should not let these titans of AI industry convince us that any regulation or anything else that stifles innovation is a bad thing. No, I would say that's good at this point. If you slow AI innovation, that is a good thing. And even though, yes, you will be preventing some people from getting benefits they otherwise would have gotten. But I think the overall risk to society and to psychological health are just major. And, and of course, the first reaction you get from the industry is, well, another reason we can't slow down, even if we wanted to stifle innovation, is, there's China, there's this, there's that, and which is just another reason we have to address this internationally, And to me, so I really think I share a lot of your basic sensibility about it.
Mm-hmm.
I just wish more people who have a fundamentally skeptical / negative reaction to the technology didn't pair that with skepticism about its eventual power. There has been this tendency, I think it's starting to change, for there to be, on the one hand, people who think it's powerful, these capabilities are amazing, they're going to get more amazing, and it's all great. And then the people, largely on the left, saying, oh, the technology is fundamentally bad, and it's hype, it's fancy autocomplete, it's not doing anything sophisticated,
Well, I think part of that is the way the companies have sold this stuff to us, and that's a component of it that is like not part of previous possible revolutionary changes, like the splitting of the atom or something. Yeah, it's like these are for-profit companies or like quasi nonprofits that are doing some weird accounting stuff so they can take in all this money, and they're selling this like from the jump as a consumer product. I mean, it would be like if like in 19, like after or even before they dropped the atom bomb, they were like, okay, they're like, here's how you can use this in your kitchen to the average American. Like, that's nuts. And the way that it's just been sold as both like a chat bot, like what you would mess around with on America Online, like when I was a teen, or a like mystical wizard that can like grant wishes. I think Altman recently said something about like granting wishes.
Oh yeah, I mean,
And so like this is it's hard to tell
about how dumb it is for him to say shit like that.
Yeah,
He
it's hard.
literally said,
And like he's in charge of one of the biggest companies. There was this New Yorker piece in which it pretty convincingly put out that like he's a congenital liar who like a lot of people don't trust, and he's like the Oppenheimer of half of this technology.
But he's not. Oppenheimer was a scientist. I mean, Altman is just an entrepreneur. He's not a tech guy. Dario Amodei, Demis Hassabis, they're tech guys. But anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the skepticism also comes from a lot of the, we've just since the pandemic, we've gone through multiple hype cycles of being told that some new tech was coming, like crypto, Web3, and the metaverse. And both of those completely fizzled out. And crypto in particular, like it turned out the only thing that's really good for was committing crime, or like complex financial transactions that Donald Trump and his sons are involved in that like screw over the average American. And so like the skepticism makes total sense to me. I don't think this is like crypto in that it's only good for fraud and crimes and has no actual like pro-social purpose. But it does seem like the technology as it currently is, when it's in the hands of the non-expert, like, high school teachers can't assign take-home essays anymore because every kid is just going to use ChatGPT. So it's like destroyed half of like primary education in America with seemingly no upside for those kids or those teachers. I was just this weekend I was at the New Jersey Pickle Festival with my girlfriend.
Ah, yes. Where is that in New Jersey?
It was in Edison, actually, so it was a little bit closer to you. And so this was just like, a lot of vendors, people selling food and pickle-related food, but also just a lot of like tchotchkes and like small businesses selling knickknacks and stuff like that. And I noticed there was so much AI-generated art, both for sale as like objects, like a towel or a poster or a keychain or something. And every food vendor had like AI generated poster menus, and they all had that same exact style. And it was like, because they just plugged in to ChatGPT or whatever, here are the prices, here are the items, make a poster. And so all these people ended up with things that look exactly the same. They all have that streak of paint, graphic design style that like words are in front of a streak of paint. And it's just like, I don't know. It was almost like being in the metaverse, but like a lame version of the metaverse, this sameness. And like, so it's useful for the small business owner who's selling at the pickle festival to be able to make a poster in 30 seconds instead of spending 6 hours on making a poster. That's good. But for everyone else, seeing everything being the same and kind of sucking, like that doesn't help us. And I think that's part of what's fueling the backlash.
I mean, I think in a way you should wish it was more like crypto, because the thing about crypto is I still haven't heard a persuasive use case.
Right.
That's legal. And I mean, I think there probably are some. I don't want to sell it short, but it just doesn't, there isn't the compelling logic. The thing about AI is there are a million use cases. There's nobody at that fair, at that pickle fair, who wouldn't find anything beneficial or useful about AI. Maybe they haven't discovered it, but I'm telling you, and it's going to get more and more so. And the things they say, like, well, you can tell AI art because this streaky thing, or it always uses the boldface subheads, or the latest thing I picked up, the big tell on Claude is, you should sit with that, or that's worth sitting with. It's like, who says that? When would you please stop? But it is getting more dexterous and subtle, and more, these op-ed submissions are gonna be harder to stereotype, to pigeonhole. But anyway, the main thing is like, it's just a broadly alluring technology. I mean, as I said, I agree with you. There's tons I don't like about it, but there are things about it, like when I'm sick or when I want to find out a particular thing, or when I want to just get something done. I still run this very small nonprofit, the NonZero Foundation, which puts out the podcast and newsletter and so on. More and more things I might have assigned a human to do, it can do. I mean, I just made a website for my book, okay? And these are real use cases. This is not crypto.
Right.
It is going to permeate life, and we need to get ready for that. I say we should not hasten it. If anything, we should slow it and think about it. But I wish the logic behind it were, in a way, I wish the logic behind it were as weak as the logic behind crypto.
Right. So it is not crypto, yeah, which seemingly is only useful for fraudulent uses, because it does have legitimate uses, and it's not the metaverse either. Although I guess you talk somewhat about how it could interact with a metaverse-like thing if it, like, you put a helmet on and it gives you this reality that's so compelling, tailored to you, that you don't want to interact with real humans or real reality.
Yeah, I do
anymore.
think the metaverse is yet to come, and I think AI will draw a lot of people into it. I've always been a believer in the metaverse.
Right, and that's like the Matrix idea of like, would you prefer a life where you were floating in a pod and you were given a great life that only existed, had no actual reality?
The brain in the vat thought experiment.
Right. I don't know. Some people would take that, but I think not everyone. Hard to know, but yeah. But also, they can't seem to get these helmets good enough that people like actually want to wear it all the time. Like that's part of the problem as well. But
have you tried the Vision Pro? I haven't, but a lot of people have.
I don't play video games, so I've never really tried. I tried there was one that Nintendo put out around 1993 that would just use stereoscopic vision that I remember playing around with when I was like 10 years old, but I haven't tried beyond that.
Yeah, I haven't gotten into that stuff much myself.
But I mean, there was like, especially after we were coming out of lockdown and the pandemic, I think there was this sort of like desire for actual leaving your house, actual human interaction, talking to real people. And like that is not in the interests of Apple Computer. and Mark Zuckerberg, like they want you glued to their products or looking at a screen that they can serve ads on.
Right.
I want to ask, I mean, one of the
I just want to quickly say you should pause on, you should sit with that, as Claude would say, because the AI companies have the same incentive. They want to optimize for engagement, and they are using a tool that can manipulate us psychologically to that end with incredible subtlety and power and growing subtlety and power. It's already true that these bots are better at persuading people to change their views on policy issues than the average human being is in these blind tests, where you don't know whether you're talking to a bot or a human. So that is just, I mean, there are a lot of things to worry about here. That's why I say don't go full speed ahead.
Yeah, and the stories that started coming out a couple of years ago about like AI psychosis or something, or people who started using it and then either like they were prone to schizophrenia or they already had schizophrenia, and the chatbot is telling them like, yes, you have discovered, like, you are the only person who really perceives reality. And then sometimes these people kill themselves or murder their loved ones or something. I'm really shocked by how the companies are like, yes, this is just like consumer technology that you can use in the same way you'd use a GPS or something, but it has all these, like, they must know about like the dangerous aspects and reinforcing people who are slightly off kilters, delusions and stuff like that. So it seems incredibly irresponsible by these companies to proceed in this way. It's just like a consumer product like any other. Yeah, like it seems like giving nuclear technology to an average person and just be like, so I see what you can make with this. Like that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, they would say that once these problems surface, they try to do something about them, and they do to some extent. But look, I've long thought that a lot of people in Silicon Valley treat us like laboratory rats. I mean, Zuckerberg literally did. He was doing experiments without telling people, like manipulating the emotions of randomly selected users and then seeing what they do. I forget the details, but yeah, I mean, look, and in a way, that's commerce, right? It's like everyone wants to optimize engagement. If you make
Right.
Snickers bars, you want to optimize engagement you want people to spend as much time eating Snicker bars as possible. And do they worry? Do they lie awake at night worrying about the effects of sugar on? No, of course they don't. I mean, this is capitalism, but they don't until there's some controversy or there's some government, hearings or something. But this technology is unique in its potential power, both for good and ill. And some of the natural incentives of commerce could naturally lead to very unfortunate outcomes. Optimizing for engagement is a bad rule of thumb.
So isn't that an argument that this should not be in the realm of profit making, and that governments or universities or nonprofits or something should be the only ones who have like access to this technology? Or maybe that's not possible or legal or something.
When levying a 0.5% tax on a data center is just politically unthinkable, I think turning America into a socialist paradise is for the time being beyond the Overton window. I mean,
right. But okay. So that's something else I wanted to talk about, which is there is this backlash to data centers being constructed, in your town kind of thing.
Yeah.
And just sort of a populist backlash that I'm seeing to AI stuff in the wild or online. So for some reason in the past couple weeks, I've gotten served on Instagram a lot of obvious AI ads. Usually, so it's two sorts: ads by the AI company saying like, use our products for XYZ, and ads where they obviously used AI image generation or video generation to produce something. And the comments, and so I started looking at the comments of these, and they're uniformly negative. Unfortunately, some of them have an anti-Semitic negative tinge to them, where there's this meme online.
The comments or the ads?
The comments, where there's this, somehow this meme is taken off that Israelis really love AI, or Israel is behind all AI. And so some people comment like, I'm in Tel Aviv and I love this. And this is obviously an American or something. with an Israeli flag. So I'm not a fan of that in general, but you just see a ton of people, like there's this meme of like a SpongeBob thing saying like AI with a, international no sign through it. So there's enough people who are pissed about this in various ways that, like, okay, this technology in the book you compare it to evolution in various ways, but this it's a material technology, and it seemingly requires a ton of input of capital, computer chips, electricity, other such things, and people can object to the data center being put in their neighborhood. They could say, I'm not going to your restaurant if you're advertising it using obvious AI images. Or, you could see something more extreme of like a neo-Luddite thing where people are like trying to blow up the data centers, or I think someone did try to shoot at Sam Altman's house with a gun, just like a populist backlash of either politically or like violently or terroristically or something against all this by people who just don't want it and feel like it's being shoved down their throats, which I kind of agree with it. It's like, we didn't ask for this technology to happen. So the inevitability of it seems much more contingent to me based on political decisions and economic decisions, and something another consideration is like, is there a giant financial bubble related to all this stuff of massive overinvestment, where it's going to pop and crash like the housing bubble or something like that. It seems like it's propping up half of the stock market. And I just read today, a quarter of GDP growth is attributed to AI investment. I don't know. They're acting like, okay, so what do you think about all of that?
Well, I mean, first of all, on the bubble, yeah, there could well be a bubble. There was a .com crash, but the .com crash didn't mean that the web wasn't going to become a huge thing. So that's like it could be ruinous for a lot of people financially, but I personally think the only kind of AI crash you're likely to get is a temporary setback, unless governments step in and exert a lot more force than I anticipate in slowing the development of the technology itself. As for, the idea that this isn't inevitable, we can stop it, I encourage that attitude. I mean, I don't know how realistic actually stopping it is, but I think, there was this recent letter from all these notables saying we may need to start thinking about pacing the frontier via international coordination. And one form that could take is, in a way, the easiest thing to do globally if you wanted to coordinate is to actually pause large training runs, because they're so conspicuous when you're training a whole new generation of AI that's the kind of treaty you could enforce. You would know if they were firing up 500,000 NVIDIAs to train, and draining shitload of power to create a whole new generation. So I encourage all that kind of thinking. I still do believe that if you don't think about this as an evolutionary process, again, as you suggested, at a couple of levels, I mean, the sense in which the training of an AI is itself a form of, an intelligent life evolving within the training center. But beyond that, the whole ecosystem is kind of evolving under the influence of commercial pressure and consumer choices. Consumers in principle have the power to direct the evolution or to slow it or anything else. It depends on what they want. But I think if you don't see it as, in some sense, an evolutionary force, you will underestimate the challenge of meaningfully influencing its direction. I think it has that kind of power behind it. I mean, technology in general does. It's like, could you have stopped motor vehicles from becoming a thing? Maybe, but people in every country seem to want them a lot. It's like that.
Yeah. And I guess, that's, I guess the thought experiment would be like, if we could go back and tell, like urban planners and so forth, like, don't remake, don't like plow the freeway into your downtown and tear out, whole neighborhoods. So with the idea that people will want to drive to, drive in and stuff, like that sort of wisdom and slowing down would have been beneficial. Even though, yes, every, people love and hate cars, and any like developing country, like people, once they reach a certain ability to afford cars, they seem to want them. I want to run something by you that I've been thinking about, and there must be an answer for this, but I can't figure out what it is. Okay, all these, Claude and or OpenAI and Facebook's and Meta and Google, they all are like plowing all this investment and work into AI, seemingly with the idea that like they will become like the dominant AI company, in the way that Google became the dominant search company and Facebook became the dominant social media company. And so like there was one huge winner and a bunch of also ran losers in those fights. And they're all the companies are acting with their investments and valuations like eventually this is going to be like 1/3 of the global economy. Like that's what we're fighting for. Like we think we can control this or something like that.
Yeah.
And to me, a layperson, sometimes it seems like 6 months ago, ChatGPT had the best one. Now Anthropic has the best one 6 months later. It's not clear in the way that like Google was clearly so much better than web crawler or whatever. Like they're sort of evolving in lockstep, more or less, such that, and then there's also not the like lock-in effect that a social media network has of like being the early adopter and network effects and stuff like that. So they can't all win, but they're acting like one will triumph and defeat or absorb the others. Okay, so if that does happen, and let's say it's Anthropic, then you have one company or quasi nonprofit kind of thing controlling 1/3 of the economy. The federal government is not going to let that stand. It would be like giving like atomic energy to one company and like the government doesn't have access to it. So if that scenario does happen where there's one winner, it seems inevitable that the government is going to take over that company. And if that happens, then it can't make everyone trillions of dollars because the government is taking it over. And so like, what is the point of all this investment in racing? Where's the logical flaw in that?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think it's actually unclear which business models are going to work. There's a reason Anthropic is complaining about open source AI, and it isn't just, as they say, that they think it's unfair for their models to be distilled by some of the open source companies. Open source is just a threat commercially to a proprietary model. And
it seems sort of rich that these companies, which obviously like scraped all this data,
yeah, totally disregarded copyright.
Right. So yeah, it's like
now Anthropic is at least paying up. I'm supposed to get a check for thousands of dollars any moment now. I was apparently authors were just kind of de facto part of this class action.
There was a class
lawsuit.
action. Yeah.
But it is unclear whether you're going to get whether it's going to become kind of a platform the way Microsoft Windows did and so on. But in answer to your question, if there is a single AI, and by the way, this undergirds some of the thinking for other reasons, not just for economic reasons, but these people like Dario Amodei, who I think, are steeped in the kind of sci-fi origins of a lot of the AI community, I think imagine and possibly rightly that there will be. See, they imagine that once you get to super intelligence, like a lead of a couple of months becomes infinite, because once you get to super intelligence, your model is so much better than everything else. That's why he thinks geopolitically the U.S. needs to get to super intelligence and bring China to its knees. I mean, Dario is like an uber China hawk. And relatedly, people are worried about the loss of control sci-fi scenario, the Matrix scenario, Terminator scenario, like I think Dario, they tend to believe, people in his position, like they're the ones, like I really, it is commonly said about Dario, I think it's true. He thinks that he is a person of such moral righteousness and integrity that if he's in charge of the model that wins, the world will be okay. I mean, you laugh, but everyone believes that about everyone in Silicon Valley says that about him, and it's entirely consistent with his behavior. Altman, I'm less sure about. I think Demis Hassabis kind of has that view. So anyway, there's a lot of things that figure into this whole scenario where there's one AI to rule them all. Now, back to the question you asked. I think, first of all, the nexus between AI and government is a very dangerous place, right? Like right now, Trump is just kind of asserting that he gets to review AI models. And today we got reports that he's not even going to tell us what the criteria are. So like right now, he's got access to the unguardrailed mythos, which means in principle, I doubt this is happening, but he could be doing God knows what with it, like breaking into my email. I don't know, and we should be very concerned about the concentration of power in a world of AI, especially any kind of nexus between billionaires and politicians with authoritarian leanings. I mean, as for what you said, yeah, you can already see the government's not going to take this line down, right? Trump is already doing the kinds of things you're anticipating. He's not asserting the right to take over the company, but he just asserted, without initially an executive order. He just used some bullshit rationale for taking Fable, which was the safeguarded version of Mythos, in effect off the market by citing export controls, something or others, or entity list something, which made no sense whatsoever. But he did it. And look,
he does a lot of stuff that maybe is not by the book.
Well, yeah. That said, I mean, look, these models have capability that warrants government scrutiny. Somebody should be looking at them. It's just that it shouldn't be this guy.
Yeah,
it's like.
But I mean, you could, okay. Let's say that a AGI superintelligence grows out of one of these companies, and then suddenly, well, it's hard to, I don't know, I can't think of what that would be like. But then, suddenly, Sam Altman is sort of like the philosopher king of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Surely the U.S. Congress will pass a law, and the president will sign it that will limit his power somehow, or expropriate, seize the company, saying this is too dangerous for one person to have. They can do it legally or quasi-legally or something. But the American people were apparently okay with Donald Trump, being our philosopher king. But no one had heard of Sam Altman or Dario Amodei, 5 years ago, and that they just happened, we don't want that person to be our philosopher king either. So it could happen legitimately or quasi-legitimately or totally illegitimately. It just seems like if it is as powerful, it would be like if instead of the Manhattan Project, just some like backyard hobbyists had invented the atomic bomb. Whether or not World War II was happening, the government would have taken over the entire thing and prevented normal people from, or companies from, developing atomic bombs. If this is as powerful as atomic energy, or 100 times more powerful, we can't understand it. A company or a quasi nonprofit is not going to be running the thing.
No, I think the government will try to get a very considerable degree of control, much the way you anticipate. I would note that.
So then who's making money then? And what is Wall Street doing? And all these people who are planning on buying yachts or whatever.
Well, I mean, supposedly in the era of superintelligence, I mean, this is these guys talking, not me, but you have incredible prosperity, and the question is just, do we distribute it equally with UBI or something? I mean, that's what they would say, is that, once it permeates the economy, putting the government in control of the very most powerful models would not end the productive effect of the technology, I guess. But I want to emphasize, remember, this is a technology that if you've got the best version of it, then you have maybe the power to do things like go on social media and evade all bot detectors. Okay. So, if people are developing filters to tell them what's a bot and what's a real person, the super smart version would presumably be able to figure out a way to come off as a real person. You deploy like 1 billion of these things to persuade people to reelect you or whatever you want to persuade them of.
Mhm.
I mean, this is kind of sci-fi, but I'm just emphasizing, one problem with comparing it to nuclear power is there are so many dimensions of power and danger and different kinds of power and danger that we should be very wary. I mean, you're raising the question kind of like, what would the government take over? What effect would that have on Aryeh's retirement account? I mean, I know you're not, but you are saying like, what's the effect on the stock market?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like
Okay,
everyone.
that question. There's also the question of like, isn't it scary if the government gets very close to this stuff? This is what I'm saying. There's so many imponderable issues that we should proceed slowly.
Right. Well, okay, I agree with you there, and slowing down further. And you write in the book how the people within the industry always just say, but China, like this is, China is going full steam ahead, and if they develop general artificial intelligence or AGI or whatever, then like they will, destroy us or something. And I mean, I would rather have the U.S. government in charge of it than the Chinese government. But preferably neither, I guess. Or this is where you get into the idea of international cooperation and some sort of global government to handle this technology. I don't know. Okay, we've been going for a while, but there's another sort of.
Yeah, my COVID is catching up with me too. So
right. Okay. Well,
we should approach the stirring crescendo of this conversation.
Okay. Here's a thought I had recently, and it occurred to me again as I was reading the book. Since like roughly the year 2000, there's been a lot of grandiose schemes that various people have come up with that they have tried, and almost all of them have either failed disastrously or like perversely only benefited a small group of people. And this could go from the Iraq War, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, smartphones, like a lot of like big ideas. People have been like, this is going to be the big thing. This will work out fine. And it's either been a huge disaster, like in the case of one country invading another, almost always is a huge disaster, or has just been sort of like, well, this sucks. In the end, cryptocurrency going to change everything, it going to democratize finance and all this stuff. Oh, it turns out it just basically sucks. And I've thought about like writing something about this. It would tell me something like 2 decades of failure or something. Like it's like, what was the last sort of like big, hubristic, idealistic project that we've thought would go well? Maybe it was like the forming of the European Union or something. But like everything has just been.
Well, that turned out to have some downsides too. Although
they always do. But like Brexit, people who were in charge of Brexit thought that would be a great idea. Like it's obviously turned to shit. Left-wing Donald Trump, a lot of people thought that would be a great idea. It's just like so many things. I don't know. The complexity of the world has increased. I don't know. We're running up against the limits of human understanding or something. It's just like so many things.
Good news. AI can figure everything out for us, Aryeh.
Well, so is AI similarly? So you would say this is it's just like, is this also going to turn to shit? Not in like the robots turning us all into paper clips or something, but just like a small handful of men get really rich and everyone else's lives like either don't improve or are shittier in some way.
What happens depends on what path we take. And in addition to just slowing things down, which you can only do with international coordination, in addition to taking care of a lot of specific safety issues, some of them with international coordination, I also advocate that we'll actually try to cultivate what I call cognitive sovereignty, not be easily manipulated by these machines. And in principle, you can use AI to help you do that. It's not inherent in the technology that it will be optimized for engagement or will make you feel more self-righteous that, you are right and the other tribe's wrong or any of that. And I think we should all very self-consciously try to, use AI and express through the market a demand for AI that actually makes us better people and all of that. So, I mean, first of all, I can't predict how it's going to play out. I mean, you're right that things lately haven't looked all that great for big human endeavors. And a particular unsettling thing is our own government has just gotten worse and worse at producing coherent and productive legislation, policy, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, partly because we're so polarized, partly because the system is so beholden to different interest groups, which collectively can have just a paralyzing effect sometimes, and sometimes have a specifically pernicious effect. That's all bad, but I would emphasize that, again, to compare AI to like a campaign, like a decision to invade Iraq or to build the super highway system or anything else like that, I think is misleading. It is a market force that grows ultimately out of human demand. Okay, people in these companies want it because it can save them money. It can replace workers. They want it. There's a market for it. Individuals want it because it can answer their medical questions and simplify their life in various ways. That may not all be evident, but it's happening. And whatever you think about the market, it's actually not that bad at tailoring products to appeal to human beings, and for better or worse sometimes, for worse sometimes. But so I just don't. I mean, I wish it was as simple as like, do we want to do this AI thing or not? I mean, I think the best we can hope for is to organize people who don't want to just buy the kind of Silicon Valley billionaire libertarian line about it, and try to forcefully exert influence on its course, and very self-consciously put it to genuinely productive use in our own lives. Help us see the world more clearly, get a more objective take on the world. I mean, by the way, these wars, one reason they happen and the American public keeps swallowing them is because mainstream media, is just not doing its job. It didn't do it before the Iraq War. It's not doing it with the Iran War, even though the MSM's kind of hatred of Trump does lead it to do some negative reporting about the Iran War. It is still the case that if you ask, like, what got us into a mindset in the first place to think, well, yeah, okay, maybe if it works out, like if bombing Iran works out, like, why the fuck not, right? And then it didn't work out. People go, oh, this is bad. Well, you know what? Attacking countries for no reason whatsoever is bad in the first place, if you ask me.
Right. Although something that's positive is that as far as I can tell, the Iran war was unpopular from the start, which is different than previous American wars that we started. Like it's been unpopular. Like it was under 50% to begin with, and it's only been sinking since.
Yeah. I mean, that's partly
people are not excited about.
Well, it's partly because there's so much dislike of Trump, and partly because Trump didn't even go through the motions of justifying it. I mean, remember with the Iraq War, they came up with this whole story about WMDs. Trump was just, even when the war was launched, people were like, he hasn't explained like why. And then Marco Rubio, remember, he said, well, we knew Israel was going to attack, and we figured if we didn't, and people were like, whoa. Like, what? Like, other countries can choose to attack countries, and we want to make sure we can handle a blowback, so we just attack them first?
Yeah,
what?
I mean, I think this is a side note, but I think what's ultimately going to come out is that, they had this plan they're developing for a very long time with the Israelis. The Israelis had the intelligence up. They knew exactly where Khamenei was going to be at the exact time, and they said, this is our moment. And Trump, being the bloodthirsty sociopath that he is, was like, yeah, let's take him out without really thinking. And he thought it was going to all go like Venezuela. went with those put a puppet
I
in.
think the Israelis had a more elaborate plan of regime change.
Yes, they thought
the
thought
Kurds and
Ahmadinejad was going to go in there.
Ahmadinejad and all
Wild.
this shit. It's amazing that they believed it. But in any event, what I want to say is there is a problem. It isn't just U.S. media. It's like all countries filter information through the media system, whether it's like, an authoritarian system like China, where the government is doing a lot of it, or it's done more kind of de facto and implicit collaboration with the government. All countries have information filtered that leads them to believe that they are more in the right than they are, and that their adversaries are more in the wrong than they are. And in principle, you can build an AI agent today. You can go in and vibe code it that will give you a clearer view of the world. Okay? It will go out to global media and say, here's the other side of this story. Here's the other side of that story. That's just one example. You don't have to vibe code it. I mean, people are presumably developing them, and there will be ways to get them. I just want to say, like, that's the way I would encourage us to think about AI. How can it actually be used to influence my own consciousness and perspective in a way that is both good for me and good for the world? If enough people do that, we'll be in better shape than if enough people don't.
Okay, that's probably a good place to wrap things up.
That's my stirring conclusion. Yes.
Right. The book I read before reading your book was Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which was written 200 years ago. And there were unsettling parallels to, creating something kind of for no reason in Victor Frankenstein's case, that ends up just, ruining his life. And I couldn't help but, draw some parallels there. And then just last weekend, I happened to consume another great work of art from the pre-AI era, which is the original Jurassic Park movie I watched. And there's a lot there as well, where the character says, it's about hubris, unexpected, things happening that you can't possibly anticipate. Your scientists were so concerned with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think whether or not they should. And there's a lot of things that, like, we've been dealing with powerful technology for a long time. There's a lot of stuff in the culture that's warning us about ways it can go wrong, or it can backfire or something. And the full steam ahead approach of the investors and the Silicon Valley people seems very, very misguided to me. And I don't know. I hope for the best, but I'm not super optimistic.
Yeah. My final Frankenstein related thought is it's also a story about a lapse of cognitive empathy. Cognitive empathy, just like understanding what's going on in people's minds. Frankenstein's his motives are misconstrued as aggressive and monstrous, as I recall, and that leads to trouble. And this is the most common generic cause of war in the world for both sides, to view things that are done for defensive purposes as offensive. And that is another example where if you can see through the media bias surrounding your country, you will be a more informed voter, and you will be less gullible when they tell you that China is some kind of existential threat to America or whoever else is. And so that's my Frankenstein take home. View things from the point of view of the monster.
Yes, and someone who had only had the popular perception of Frankenstein, like, the book is much stranger and different than that. And the whole thing is, like, in the beginning, the monster is sort of like a baby newly born in an adult's, like, disgusting body, and, like, needs to learn language and stuff, and then, like, finds a copy of Paradise Lost and reads it and is like learns all this. Like, it sort of, there is a little bit of a parallel there to, like, training an AI, where the monster is, like, observing human action, reads Paradise Lost and the Bible to learn about writing and human culture and stuff, and then is ready to like, meet humans, but then because it's so scary looking, everyone freaks out, and then he gets really mad and goes on a killing spree. So I don't know.
Yep.
I mean,
I would too. Who among us, right?
but maybe Dario Amodei has read a book in the past 5 years, but like I don't think Sam Altman or Elon Musk or anyone else has, and more people, like they're all full steam ahead guys, and it seems it's very scary.
I've got a book for him.
Yes, the God Test.
Exactly.
Artificial intelligence.
That's so weird. It's like you read my mind. That was uncanny.
Artificial intelligence and our coming cosmic reckoning. I don't think Elon's going to read it, but maybe Sam could be guilted into skimming it or something. So thanks, Bob, for coming on.
Thank you, Aryeh.
Congratulations on the
great
book.
Conversation. This was fun, and now I will leave you to a pleasant evening with your AI companion.
Well, I'm gonna go out into the world and experience reality unmediated by a headset. Or
I do encourage that, man. Go see some live music. Human beings.
Right. Yeah. I wonder, like, if live entertainment is going to become a lot more popular, because that is.
I think so. I actually think
something you can't
small
fake.
scale local stuff will be more highly valued. I think.
Yeah, I actually saw Shakespeare in the Park last week, and that was fun seeing real people performing and stuff. Okay, so a link to the book will be in the show notes. The NonZero newsletter and podcast, people can check that out as well. Link to that will be there. Also, thanks, Bob, for coming on. Thanks to all the listeners out there who can rate and review, tell their friends, tell their AI companion, program a bot to leave positive reviews of this show all over
on a large scale.
Right. Okay. And we'll see you next time.